Hello, Jim here from PSI Brand. Welcome to Brand News, our August edition. So what's been happening? Well, let's tell you three things. Brand story. Our brand story this month is about Hirepool. So Hirepool work with Rotiform Plastics in Auckland. Now, Hirepool is a haulage company that hire assets all throughout New Zealand, but their concept is, or mantra is, work smarter, not harder. It's exactly what they did with their brand. So they understood branding, and building a better brand is very visual, right? So they had these plastic barriers which are used for safety, and they saw that as a perfect billboard opportunity. Problem is, nothing sticks to plastic, right? Period. So this is where David at Rotiform comes to play. So he helped them with a branding system that really was a small cost for a long-term benefit. So listen to David, he'll tell you the story himself.
Maybe you'd just like to briefly tell us about the range of products you've got across the bottom there, because it's a very wide and diverse range of products.
It is fairly broad. We generally operate in two divisions, if you like. It's our B2B market, which we generally own the IP and sell our own products mainly into the food and transport industry.
Yeah.
So that's your folding bins, double skin bins, your lockers you can see there,
yeah.
And street safety furniture. The other market we're in is the B2C, which we do treat quite separately. It's mainly spa pools. We sell plug-in spas direct to the public through things like home shows and through the internet and auction sites. So yeah, it's fairly broad, but we try and focus our energy into those two markets.
Excellent, that's really good. And obviously we were chatting about the Hirepool earlier when we caught up earlier this week. And we're looking around what were some of the motivating factors for you around actually pursuing, putting some graphics on. And you came up with 4 really interesting points there. How'd you like to just talk to those 4 points that you had mentioned beforehand?
Yeah, sure. This particular customer is a custom customer. In other words, unlike most of our products, this is actually a tool which is owned by the customer. They came to us a few years ago, and we've been working with them to try and build their business. They're actually New Zealand's biggest hire company now. They used to use stickers, and of course the stickers, they just fall off after the first water blast once they've been out in the field. Mm-hmm. And so they're having all sorts of issues like their assets being stolen and the stickers looking terrible, like those pictures of those bins you showed, Mike.
Yeah, very much.
Of course. And so we convinced them to change over to the graphics. They are obviously more expensive than a printed sticker, but it was a pretty easy decision for them because there was a genuine quick ROI. Just because they weren't having to replace the stickers every time they sent them out, and so there was a time saving there. Not having to pay labour to re-put on the sticker. The brand was always there, and of course, most importantly for them, at a few $100s a pop every time they lose one, it's obviously a significant loss. And so having a huge big mould and graphic, it really does deter people from taking them and using them in their own fleets. And they always look good.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and really interesting. Just around what you mentioned there, sort of that long-term effect and that ability to just keep a good, clean image out there, which is one of the key things sort of mentioned beforehand. Sort of looking at those bins and just knowing that your image is out there all of the time. And of course, I like the picture you sent through, sort of from that, through to that on an ongoing, consistent basis. Really important.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then, of course, you mentioned there the price differences, and one of the key things is it worth the investment? And I think for me, the term that I really loved, and I've gone, as you can see, gone and put it in the top there, was the "do it once, do it right" term. I thought that was really neat. But how'd you just like to talk to us about the investment required to get that result? Well,
in this case, it wasn't actually that much difference. I mean, it was nearly 2 times the cost of going to the permanent mould and graphics. So it was a pretty easy decision for them because they worked out pretty quickly that they only had to replace the sticker once, and they're already on a losing road, let alone taking into account the labour content. So yeah, it was a pretty easy decision for them. It was actually relatively cheap, in this case. Sometimes when we're convincing customers to take graphics, it does take more convincing. I can think of one recently. We've just done a long run of a food grade bin for a big crisp manufacturer here. They took a little bit more convincing, but one of the things that actually turned them is we told them we could mould in a sequential mould and graphic.
Yeah.
And suddenly they thought about that, and that actually was a benefit to their process. And so, sometimes it takes a little bit more of an offering to sort of convince them that it's a good idea.
Yes.
But as a part of their branding, they put in this enormous sequential barcode so that the drivers didn't have to jump off the forecourse every time they picked.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
it was an automatic thing. So yeah, I think most of the time there is a genuine benefit for the customer. So yeah, it's a pretty common thing we use now.
Oh, that's wonderful. One of the things I really like about what you've just shared there is around the fact that, and I emphasized this before in one of my top 5 tips, is that people don't often know what they don't know. And actually, setting yourself up as a person people come and ask things of, even in the Hirepool example you used beforehand, you actually being able to give that in-depth advice really does make a difference. It's really interesting, and you've touched on a number of these, but one of the questions I chucked to you is why did you sort of change from the decal through to the graphics, and you touched on a couple of key things there, particularly around that point of difference space. And would you like to just chat around what made you look at changing a little bit more in depth then?
Yeah, sometimes we are actually competing with other processes as well. Our biggest competitors really are injection molders, an imported injection molded product. So we try and add value as much as we can, and yeah, I mean the ultimate is becoming that sort of go-to person. And generally, I think about our top 20 customers. I would say if you asked each of them, we probably would be, even when they're looking at other processes. They'll come and talk to me, about the options. And yeah, part of that has been, this movement towards graphics and trying to add genuine value, either, saving them money or improving their processes, either through efficiency or better control, things like that. So yeah, and of course, the credibility in the market, that's number one, and that's how you get that to be that go-to person. And, the graphics has been a part of that for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's really interesting. We're going to hear from Walter, and he mentioned some of those points that you've brought up in that, and it is actually the basis of the second poll we'll run today, just around really being able to stand out and giving yourself that credibility and realizing where people do see you, and looking at how can you stand out and be that point of difference in a market that's getting ever more competitive. David, thank you very much indeed, and it's really great to get that feedback, and for everyone else to hear it. And one of the key things I really want to pick up for all the other molders on the line is, just like David, you can be that point of difference. You can stand out for people and help your customer to stand out as well. So David, thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for inviting me.